Doesn't matter how much fat you eat before or after a workout. There's so much information out there. I was told it should be 10 grams or less. We're going to be talking about this today and so much more. Let's dive in.
Let's start off with a little housekeeping, guys. We have something coming out. Let's see. We're recording this the day before Thanksgiving. It's going to come out the day after Thanksgiving. So, first of all, hope you guys all had a wonderful holiday and you're not feeling too uncomfortably full right now, digesting it all, got your walks in, kept the little things on point. That being said, we've got a fun little something something coming out December 1st. So, for those of you who are current one on one clients, who are current app members, you're going to see an email on what day?
Most likely Saturday or Sunday. Saturday?
Saturday or Sunday? Yes, because Sunday's the
I
first.
think Sunday is the first, so Saturday.
Yes. Okay, so Saturday, fun little announcement. We are going to be launching a challenge, our first challenge in a while. It's not going to be anything crazy, but we are going to be giving away a ton of cool stuff. For those of you who are not currently in the app, you're not currently clients, you can still get in on this challenge. We have a free code for the app, free month for your first month if you have
One
not
month.
used the app before. 1 month.
Just one
Can't
month.
use it 10 or 15 times. Some people have tried. So LVLTN, you'll also see the evolution code on the site, but LVLTN should work for you. You're the first month free. That allows you to get in on the contest, win a bunch of cool prizes, even though you're not paying for it yet. We know you're going to love it, but you can cancel anytime. Not that you're gonna, but you can cancel before that ends if you're worried about that kind of thing. No, let's take it away.
All right, so answering the first question, Lixie asked about fat intake before or after a workout. There is a lot of information still out there regarding this. And I think before we dive into what's optimal, I think it's important for us to just clarify that simply eating something before a workout probably will benefit you compared to not eating something before a workout for most people. But it is also individual. So, on top of that, I also want to touch on the fact that you don't really want to miss the forest for the trees here. Am I saying that the right way? A lot of people
Yep.
get so hyper focused on these tiny things when it comes to nutrition and implementing nutritional strategies in their day to day life, when in reality, we want to focus on the bigger picture. So if you're not somebody who's regularly hitting their macros or their fiber intake or their calories, and you have no idea what that looks like on a day to day basis, you probably don't need to worry about what your fat intake is pre and post workout. That's a smaller rock that we want to focus on, and maybe like could be the last 5% of things that you focus on when it comes to your nutrition. Because yeah, maybe at that point it could help you a little bit more. But I think a lot of people just get so fixated on pre, intra, post workout timing when we need to really make sure we're nailing the basics first. That's going to affect your workout performance that much more. Do you guys agree?
Totally agree. And that's something where, people will just jump into tracking for the first time. And it's okay, how do I divide out this throughout the day? Not even just pre and post workout, but how do I spread these macros throughout the day? When really it's going to come down to total intake. And we could talk about optimizing muscle protein synthesis and how that should be spread. But at the end of the day, it's about hitting those basics first. So if you're not doing those things, don't work about any kind of additional nutritional guideline. That's like the tip of the iceberg in the beginning. It's about establishing that foundation. So just to kind of hammer that last point home too as well.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is I think it's okay to at least take a big picture approach to your pre workout nutrition. Like, yes, of course, we want to be paying attention to what nutrition looks like throughout the day and not just pre workout. I know the question was specifically about how much fat to eat before or after a workout and to limit fat intake. It used to be sort of believed that. A fat intake pre-workout would be a detriment to your workout. And it's not necessarily that it's a detriment. It's more so that we want to keep a pre-workout snack or meal fairly easy to digest so that we are not having digestive upset during a workout. We want the blood flow to be getting shuttled essentially to the muscles to help us with that workload. And if your body's like, hey, we got all this peanut butter and all these like high fat things to digest, it can kind of slow digestion and sometimes cause some digestive upset. So you might hear someone say that, we want to limit fiber and fats in a pre-workout meal. It's not, like I said, it's not because those things are going to be inherently bad for you. More so, it may be an issue of we don't want to kind of impede digestive capacity. So generally speaking, when it comes to a pre-workout meal and even a post-workout meal, I like to tell people like a carb protein sandwich. And I don't mean a literal like turkey sandwich on bread. I mean, sandwich your workout between protein and carbohydrates. It's okay if there is some fat in there. You just don't want fat to be a predominant part of that pre or post-workout meal.
Love it. All right, next question. And by the way, you guys, if you want to ask questions and you're not part of our Facebook community yet, we'll have that linked in the show notes if you want to join there. We throw up a post every week for a Q&A question specifically. So don't be afraid to come in, join us as a part of the podcast community. You are welcome with open arms. All right, this next question is from Crystal. She asked, kind of along the similar lines here, is it important to have equal macros for each meal? I tend to eat a lot more protein and calories for dinner because that's when I'm most hungry. Does it really matter? What are your thoughts?
That's a great jumping point from what we just talked about. We hinted at with that first question. First, just make sure you're hitting those targets. So if you are tracking, sounds like you are, obviously, making sure that at the end of the day, you're within, plus or minus 5 grams of protein and carbs, plus or minus 10 grams of protein and carbs, plus or minus 5 grams of fat is pretty solid. Now, aside from that, it is slightly beneficial, as what I was alluding to kind of spread that protein evenly throughout the day to keep muscle protein synthesis optimized throughout the day. From that point, and even tracking in general, assuming you're within, healthy ranges, where the carbs and fats fall becomes slightly less important. It's really, protein and calories. I will say you may notice a difference in how you feel based on those differentiating ratios. I played with this for a long time. I was always higher carb and lower fat, and I don't mean actually low fat, but lower fats. And then playing with this about a year and a half ago, I just felt a little bit better doing a week of higher fats and moderate carbs. So going from, let's say, 450 grams of carbs down to like 300-ish and bumping my fats up to, 120, 130, 140, whatever it was. And I felt better. I had more energy. I felt less tired, weighed down, sluggish. So that's just me understanding how to fine tune my body specifically. And you guys might notice those things. So as you dive into your journey and you're paying attention, you're noticing these trends. That's why it's so important to stick to something for more than a week. Like give yourself 3 to 4 weeks when you're testing something new. But circling all the way back, not necessary to hit, a specific calorie target for every single meal. You can differentiate those. So if you notice it's just easier with your lifestyle to divvy them up a certain way, or you notice you feel a lot better divvying it up a certain way, run with that.
All right, let's move on to the topic of stress. We've been talking about stress a lot lately, I feel like, both on Instagram and on the podcast, but there was 2 questions in particular about stress. So one of them wanted us to elaborate a little bit on Coach John's, we sent out an email, I think it was 2 weeks ago now, just discussing that topic more about stress eating and stress management specifically. And then the other one asked tips to help manage stress, especially through the holiday season. So let's just kind of maybe give everybody a couple take-home notes when it comes to stress management, and then maybe we can keep the stress eating conversation after that.
Yeah, I think, one, I'd love to have John on the podcast. I know we're scheduling all of them out with the coaches. I'd love for him to speak on that email specifically. Like if someone's going to do a deep dive into it, I'd love for it to be John since he wrote it. But I think we can definitely speak to, general stress management. I know someone mentioned like, especially through the holidays. Not to beat a dead horse here, y'all, because I know this probably comes up in some capacity on like almost every episode. But sticking with your foundations as much as humanly possible, I find, helps to anchor me in a stressful season. And so, I know Alessandra, Josh, we've talked about this a little bit in some of our previous episodes, but being able to have the foundations, as we like to call them, to kind of fall back on. We talked a little more about this in the Disney trip, where like we were traveling, we were out of routine, but we still tried to prioritize protein. We still tried to get color in. We still tried to sleep. We still got in tons of movement with walking. And so I don't know that that's a direct necessarily way to manage your stress, but I find that to be helpful for stressful seasons or stressful trips or holidays and things like that, because there is something that is helpful about keeping those foundations and those almost like non-negotiables in your day and in your busy seasons or your stressful seasons or your holiday seasons, because I think that almost anchors you in your routine.
Yeah, I think with the holidays specifically, a lot of people get stressed because of that solely. They're out of the routine. There are a lot of things going on that maybe are out of their control. So focus on your controllables. What can you control today? What choices can you make today? Whether it's having to do with your nutrition or getting movement in or implementing some gratitude practice or I was going to say manifestation, but I meant to say meditation. Manifest away. If that helps you de-stress, go for it. But my point is, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Joelle. Like the primary source of stress for a lot of people during this time is just all of the extras and like being out of our typical routine when we're comparing it to slower seasons. So if we can develop a plan and a protocol to still implement our basic things and maybe shift them and adapt them and pivot to fit this season, you're going to feel a lot better than if you're just like flying by the seat of your pants and have no plan and just going one day at a time, figuring out when you're going to this party or to this person's house or whatever it is. So have a plan and have even a backup plan that if something does happen, you still have those few basic things that center you and ground you.
I also find it sometimes difficult to answer a question about managing stress because how people handle stress is so variable. Like for some people it's therapy, for some people it's a gratitude practice, for some people it's meditation, like you said. And so, we could talk certainly about what we do to manage stress, but some of those might resonate and some of those might not. Like for me, it's therapy. For me, like the standard, journaling was not cutting it. And I was like, I think it's time to see a therapist in this season of life. That was like early postpartum. And I still see her. But I think that just different modalities of stress management are going to differ based on the person and what their needs are.
No doubt. And, it's frustrating to hear, I'm sure. But the answer on a lot of these is always, it depends. It depends. It depends. It depends. So like with our free resources, with the podcast, obviously we try to give out as many examples, as many generic examples as possible so you can figure out what actually fits into your bucket. But without working with someone one-on-one, understanding the intricacies of their life and their lifestyle and all the things going on, it is difficult to tell you this is exactly what you need to apply. So just very generally speaking, guys, just want to make sure that as you hear about these tools that we talk about and discuss and things that might be beneficial, it's not going to be a one size fits all. You have to kind of determine what resonates with you and what you want to apply on your own, and then give it time to work. Give it a few weeks, give it 3 or 4 weeks like we were just talking about. So kind of use this blank canvas that is your regimen and use the paintbrush of these episodes, of the free resources, if you're not already working with a coach.
All right, Lucy asked, thoughts on a 3-day split, upper body, lower body, full body. Is this something you'd consider putting in the app? So what are your thoughts on that first? And then is this something we would consider?
I don't mind that split. Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You jump in first.
I was just going to say, I don't mind that split from a three, for a three. Oh my gosh. I don't mind that split for a 3-day split. I think that, typically my preference personally is 3 full body days. But if you were someone who, let's say, had to, like, I like 3 full body days if it's non-consecutive days. If you're training Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I don't want to see you doing, 3 full body days. So if you are doing consecutive days with a 3-day split, upper, lower, full can be a good can be a good strategy for that. Regarding something that we'd consider putting in the app, I mean, I'm newer to the app side of things. My Muscle Mommy program's a 4-day. Alessandra, I think Move is a 3-day. What are the splits set up for Move? Are they full body?
Move is full body because I am with you. Like my preference is if it is 3 days per week, full body is just going to give you, you're going to hit those muscle groups 3 times, which is going to give you better results than maybe hitting things 1 time per week or however people typically split that. I think with the app, our goal is to provide you guys as many possible options and resources as possible. But at the same time, if it is something so specific and is something that doesn't make sense for the masses, that's really where one-on-one training comes in. So with one-on-one training, we're literally creating the program specific to your lifestyle, to your needs, to the season of life that you're currently in, to what equipment you have available. So our app programs are our way of giving you as much as possible, but giving that to the masses. So if you really need that
Specificity.
I can't talk just like you today. But if you need that, I just want to plug one-on-one coaching there because that's really the purpose of having someone create a program for you.
All that being said, there is nothing inherently wrong with an upper lower full body split. If you are progressing well, if you're seeing that progress consistently over time, if you feel good, if you enjoy it, you enjoy the breakdown of having an upper body day, having a lower body day, and then a mix of everything on that third day, that's fine. And that's honestly something you can leverage as your training gets stale. Like I've gone from a 6-day push-pull lower to a 5-day push-pull lower, upper lower. I've done 5 total body days a week. And there, if you are doing something like that, there is an adjustment period. Like your body will kind of learn how to respond. It's lower volume per workout. And then you're kind of hitting that back to back to back to back to back on those 5 days, if that's what you're doing. So there really isn't anything wrong with that. Again, commit to it for a certain amount of time and make sure that you are progressing well over that time. And if it's something where you try it and you've been doing it for a few months and you really aren't seeing progress, then maybe change it up. But these are all tools that you can leverage to not necessarily focus on, muscle confusion. Like that's not a thing. P90X, we're not doing that. It's the novelty of it. It's enjoyable because it's a new frame to work with.
Ellie asked if cardio/lift has to happen in the evening after dinner and after the kids have gone to bed. Should you still eat a meal post-workout knowing you'll be going to bed within an hour after, or is that too late or too close to sleeping for a full meal?
My preference personally would be like if you were my client, I would prefer that you try to get something in post-workout. Josh, you might disagree with that because I know you're like no food before bed, not from a fat loss, like fat gain standpoint, but from like a sleep disruption standpoint. It then comes down to like the benefit versus risk of which is more beneficial, you getting in that last bit of protein and calories or your sleep potentially being negatively impacted. I think it would be helpful to possibly play around with both options and see how you feel. If you don't have, let's say you just ate dinner. In theory, if you just had all this protein and all these carbohydrates for dinner and then, a few hours go by and you go get that workout in, and maybe you've hit all of your calories for the day, I'm not sure that any sort of like a big meal is necessary. If you already had this big dinner meal, you likely don't need something big like that. But I think at minimum, even something just like a quick scoop away would likely be helpful. And I'd be hard pressed to assume that would like majorly impact your sleep. I think if you had a whole huge meal, that is likely unnecessary if you just had a big dinner time meal, and that is what would likely disrupt your sleep a little bit more. But I would say if you could at least maybe like at minimum get in a protein shake and maybe some just easy carbs, almost like how you would have like a quick pre-workout snack. I'd love to see something in there post-workout because I think you're also potentially at risk for sleep disruptions if you don't necessarily have something. Blood sugar drops typically, a lot of times when we sleep, and also typically drops post-workout, and you could be having sleep disruptions from your blood sugar levels post-workout if you don't have something to eat. So you might have to play the trial and error game here a little bit to see what feels best for you personally. I wouldn't say necessarily either of those is all the way right or all the way wrong in either direction. I think it's going to be kind of like Josh said before, it depends scenario.
I don't disagree with any of that. So that is very, very well put. And it's a situation where, again, you have to figure out what makes the most sense for you. If that is literally the only time that you can train, and you try to have the bigger meal before the workout and then not eat anything afterwards, and you say, you know what, that doesn't work for me. I'm really hungry. I'm waking up hungry. I'm not feeling well. And then you try the smaller little bit of protein after the workout and see how you feel. There are some things that are working against you, obviously. But if that's normal is not optimal, we talk about that all the time. In the same sense, optimal is not always realistic. The perfect way to do something is not going to be the way that you do it all the time. If you're a busy parent, you've got all these jobs, all these responsibilities, you have to do what works for you. So this isn't me saying like, don't do that. You need to change everything around for your workout. I'm just going to point out a couple things. Training right before bed like that can have a negative impact on your sleep. Eating right before bed usually has a negative impact on your sleep. So figuring out, are you wearing an Oura ring? Can you just journal down how you slept that night? Were you waking up frequently? What that looked like? What's it look like if you don't have that post-workout meal? Even something like a whey shake. I know you pointed that out, Joelle. I've noticed anything protein supplement wise that I have, even at regular dinner time, I sleep like trash. And this is something I pointed out to Alessandra a few weeks ago. I'm like, I've been sleeping terrible. The next week, I kind of picked up on the trend. Like we have even just RX bars, which really aren't, so maybe it wasn't the RX bars.
Not
It
a
was
substantial amount of protein.
yeah, well, the IQ bars maybe. Anything with an actual supplement, like whey added to it, like RX bars should be fine because it's just egg whites. But any whey supplement, my sleep was extremely disrupted. And it wasn't anything crazy. It was like a 15 or 20 gram protein bar. If I had a shake as my last meal, always disrupted. So that being said, you can expect some abnormalities within your sleep cycle because you're working out late and because you're eating later. If possible, and I'm not saying you need to do this, I would try to shift your schedule to train before anybody wakes up, like the butt crack of dawn, get that in, and then you are really optimizing your circadian rhythm as opposed to working against it. And even with that, you throw down a whey shake before it, so you don't have to get too crazy and then go into your normal breakfast and routine. So if you can flip it, that would be ideal. That's a way to make it optimal. And instead of ending your day with that thing, you're starting your day with that thing, and it's going to have a ton of positive impact throughout your day. If you can't, don't feel bad. That's not me saying you need to do that. It would be something worth trying if you can wake up that extra 30 minutes or hour earlier, and just, it's going to take some time to shift and feel good with it. But that would be my recommendation. Otherwise, do the trial and error on the other side with that evening workout.
All right, two questions similar, one from Kristen and one from Tali. So can you discuss unilateral exercises when one side is recovering from an injury or is currently injured? Specifically, do you lift different weights to accommodate or lift according to the weaker side? And then Tali asked, similar, no injury involved, but one side is just stronger than the other. So do you stay with the weight that's on the weaker side? Do you train the stronger side with a heavier weight? What is our take when it comes to this imbalance here? Which, for the record, guys, 99.9% of people have differences in strength when it comes to one side versus the other, depending on what the exercise is. So if this is you, know that you are not alone here.
Yeah, for sure. I have to see if I could find it. I think it was Coach Tom a while back. It was either Tom or Brad. I'm pretty sure it was Tom. Tom is our athletic trainer and lead programmer at Levolution, and he wrote this great email about the benefits of training the opposite side of your injury and how that can actually, from a neurological standpoint, help the injured side recover. I thought that was so cool. So like, let's say you hurt your tricep on your right side, training your tricep on your left side can actually help the recovery of your right side. I thought that was super cool. So I am team, yes, unilateral exercise, and still do that while your other side is recovering. And then once you are able to reintroduce exercise in a similar capacity or similar range of motion, you will hopefully get to catch that one side up to your other side.
Yeah, that is a super fun fact. I did not know that. That is super cool. I agree. Even when it comes to like non-injury related, if you're much weaker on one side, then I would still, I mean, I don't know. I can kind of see both sides here. Like most people are probably thinking, well, why am I going to progress my right side? That is my stronger side, and get it even stronger and create a bigger gap there. So I would just really focus on form first, really focus on the mind and muscle connection, give that weaker side a chance to get stronger. And then hopefully you'll be able to get to a place where you can continue to progress both of them. But remember, progressive overload isn't just adding weight either. There are a lot of other ways we can implement, making this more challenging even for the stronger side without increasing the weight. So that's my take.
Another point to kind of think about is, the weaker side you could train first. You could do that exercise first, that side first is what I mean. So any kind of fatigue is going to be parlayed over to the side that's already stronger.
And I would also add that unilateral exercises are a great way to help that weaker side catch up versus doing something bilaterally and then you have one side taking over. So if you are, let's say, let's just keep it simple and do like a bicep curl, a barbell bicep curl. You might have one arm that is dominant in that, or something like a leg curl. I know if I do a hamstring curl, like a seated or a lying hamstring curl, I have one hamstring that's so much stronger, and I have one hamstring that will like do the whole curl while my other hamstring's just like a lazy shit. And so splitting that into like a unilateral hamstring curl, which my gym finally just got, which is exciting, then that can actually help that weaker side catch up and do some more of the work. So the general rule of thumb is like, if you can do 25 pounds with your left arm and only 20 pounds with your right arm, the rule of thumb is to use the lesser amount, like use the 20 pounds in both arms to kind of give your weaker side a chance to catch up and prevent your stronger side from continuing to get stronger. And then your weaker side is like never able to catch up, if that makes sense.
Why did you wait for the machine? Why didn't you just take one leg out of it?
I have, but it's obviously feels just kind of more efficient to just hop on a single leg curl machine.
All right.
All right, we have maybe a handful
But
left.
thanks.
Samantha asked, should you still be doing progressive overload when you are pregnant? Is RPE okay to be at an 8 or a 9? This comes up a lot lately. At least, I think it's just because I'm pregnant right now and I show my training.
Everyone's pregnant.
Not me. Can confirm, not me.
Not Joelle. Yes, I think it's so important to continue focusing on progressing while you're pregnant. And I think it's something that's just misunderstood by a lot of people still, but you want to think about it in the sense you don't want to spend the next 10 months of being pregnant detraining your body and your muscles, right? You still want to be progressing in some way. And again, that doesn't mean we're only focusing on adding weight to the bar. There are many ways you can implement progressive overload in your training. I think it's totally fine to be at an RPE of 8 to 9. Previous me would have said, no, you have to stick to an RPE of between 6 and maybe 8 max. But again, pregnancy training is completely individual. And if that was how you trained before, you can continue to train that way throughout pregnancy, assuming you are feeling okay and you don't have an uncomplicated pregnancy. So yes, continue to get strong, train your core, gain as much muscle mass as you possibly can while pregnant. It's only going to help you postpartum and obviously through labor and delivery too. It's not going to promise you anything, but it can only be a benefit. Anything to add, Joelle?
No, I would agree. I think that generally speaking, women are scared out of exercise for a multitude of reasons. Scared out of exercise during pregnancy, and I hate to see it. So I am team yes. Like pregnancy is not a disability. So work hard. Don't lose that strength. Do whatever you can, even if you're not getting stronger your whole pregnancy. The benefit of just maintaining where you currently are is fantastic.
Agreed. Someone got mad at me for saying that, by the way, one time when I said pregnancy is not a disability. They said it was offensive to disabled people.
Interesting.
I thought that Joelle said it and was doubling down. I forgot that it was you.
That's interesting to me. I guess I can see that perspective.
To give more context, this person also was one of those people that only messaged me
hateful things.
Very, very hateful and judgmental and just not
Okay.
nice things.
So
So
just a miserable
take it
person.
with a grain of salt. Yes. All
Okay.
right. Next
Got it.
question. How to manage sickness in training as we enter sick season. I've been sick the last week, flu-like symptoms and conjunctivitis. That's pink eye, right?
Yep.
And I couldn't train. Now I feel a little bit better, but I'm still sore. My resting heart rate is still 6 to 8 beats per minute higher than usual. Do I go straight back to my training? She's in the MOVE program. She's on week 2 and week 6 of Extend. Or should I ease back in less miles, respecting RPE, even if it means scaling back? My take is
Scale.
ease back
Yeah.
in. Yep.
Scale back.
You're probably honestly not going to be able to just hop back in and do what you were like, pick up where you left off if you were sick and just you're still not feeling at your 100%. But that's the beauty of how we program, right? That's the beauty of RPE is it allows you to auto regulate and factor in life. So if your RPE is 8 this week and I don't know, just throwing out an example of back squats, maybe you finished off and you were doing like sets of 8 at 200 pounds and then you got sick and your RPE 8 of back squats this week is 150 or something. That's still RPE 8 for today. That doesn't mean you're losing strength or regressing. Focus on where you are today and make sure that your RPE is accurate for today. But ultimately, you want to ease back in, especially with the running too. If your heart rate is still elevated, you're probably going to be not feeling super great when you get back to your running training. So just go slow, slower than usual. Maybe you have to cut back on mileage or time. That is totally fine, but you will be okay. You will make it through and get back to the level of training that you were at pre-sickness.
That being said, for those of you who are waiting to feel 1,000% before you do get back into it, there is research shown that you can release more immune cells by doing some lighter training. So an RPE, say, of 5, or drastically reduce your volume. This is something I always started craving, just a quick little workout toward the end of being sick. I'm like, no, I have to wait. And research has come out to show that no, that's a thing. You will actually get out of it faster if you get a little something in there. I'm not sure if it's the same for cardio. I would say probably not. But in regards to actually lifting, getting the contraction of the muscles underweight, that has been shown to actually improve your immune function. So don't wait until you're 100%. You can probably start if you're feeling like you're getting back into it and you have the itch to do a little something. You can just scale volume way down and RPE basically around a 5.
Yeah, I would just add, you could kind of think of like an exercise workload as a continuum, where if we're entirely sedentary, that's not good for our immune system. And if we are doing too much too soon, not recovering well, intensity is very high, duration, frequency is very high, that's also not great for our immune system. So, like Josh said, when we return to exercise, it can actually be helpful for immune cells. Coach Brad, I feel like I'm just plugging everyone's emails, but like Coach Brad wrote an email on like returning to exercise and immune health considerations. And it was funny when he wrote this email. Side tangent here. When he wrote this email, Brad always includes like citations in his email for whatever research he cites. And I go down to the citations and he cited himself like in one of the research studies he did. And I was like, way to plug your own research, Brad. But him and I recorded a podcast on like exercise and immune health a while back from my previous podcast. So we'll either try to maybe get that like merged over here, or we'll just have Brad back to talk about that. But he spoke about this kind of J curve in that sense. And so if you are returning to exercise and you're at kind of the tail end, I definitely would not jump the gun. Like if you're still flu-like symptoms, don't do it. But if you're at that kind of tail end, you can reintroduce, keep the intensity lower. So whether that is RPE or, maybe you're even doing half the volume or half the RPE, I think that would be a helpful way to kind of return to exercise.
Chelsea asked us, how do you stay dedicated to your fitness through different seasons of life? Right now, I have a full plate between my own fitness, being a mom, 8 and 18 months old, nursing school, being a wife, sister, and daughter. I'll be graduating next month and have more time, but I'm worried that having more time will be a downfall. So number one, go back one episode and listen to that, because I think a lot of our takeaways from the last episode will resonate with you, Chelsea. But to kind of touch on like the having more time thing, I can totally understand like your fear there, because it's true. Like sometimes when we do have like way more time than we're used to, we can kind of procrastinate more, or like you kind of just like, I don't know. It's very weird. I go through it too. Like when we have, on days we have childcare, in my mind, I'll be like, oh, I have all this time to do extra cardio or do my workout later, or I'll push it off until later. And then later comes and it's like I'm dealing with all these other things. But on a day that we don't have childcare and I know that I have to like be by the book and this is the only time I have to get my workout in, it's so much easier mentally. So I totally can resonate with that. But I think ultimately just having a plan in place that fits the current season, and don't be afraid to schedule those workouts and schedule your self-care, which is your fitness, like you would any appointment, or like you would meeting with a client, or whatever your actual career is. But I would say don't be afraid to just start off with a more strict schedule for yourself, and understand that you don't have to be more flexible with that, even though you may have more time to be, if that makes sense.
I think they started talking about this when work from home became more popular with COVID. People were getting more done in about half the time from home because they could go on about their day and do their thing, versus knowing they were at work for 8 hours and spreading that same minimal amount of work throughout the course of those 8 hours. So it's really holding yourself to that specific standard, knowing what that schedule looks like, and not, taking all this extra time to, lackadaisical isn't the right word, but like, you have the time, so why not finagle it this way and that way? But even to kind of go back again, you've got a great episode to listen to from last week. I think we put this Q&A up right before we actually did the episode, so most of this is probably answered, but keep a little something in there throughout, and you're going to ebb and flow through all seasons of life. So it's just really important to ingrain that concept of, I can keep this thing, scale it back, scale it up, scale it down based on the way things are going, to make sure all the puzzle pieces continue to fit, rather than letting everything hit the back burner and tell yourself you're going to pick it up later, because you blink and 5-10 years go by and you're wondering what the hell happened.
I also want to add, because I happen to know that this is a Levolution client. I took her call, so I recognize her name. I'm like, hey, Chelsea. So she is a current Levolution client. And I know your coaches as well. You got Coach Courtney, and she's also a mom, and, has walked many crazy seasons of life. And so I would just kind of give you the reminder of the fact that you don't need to be perfect for your coach, and that your coach is there to meet you where you currently are. And whether that is this current season or next month is a completely different season because now you're graduating or you're walking into a new job, your coach's job is to help provide a plan for you that feels sustainable no matter the season of life that you're in. So if you are feeling like your current plan, whether it's on the macro tracking side of things or the training side of things, needs some adjusting, whether that means adjusting up or adjusting down, chat with them, communicate with them about like, hey, I actually want to add an extra strength training day, or subtract a strength training day based on my new schedule. Or I think I want to track macros instead of only tracking calories and protein. Just don't be afraid to have those conversations with your coach and communicate what those needs are. And that way she can pivot and help you adjust. The beauty of having a coach in these stressful and crazy seasons of life is that they take the planning off of your plate, for you. So I know this question was more so about like dedication. Your coach can't make you be dedicated, but a part of staying dedicated to the process is that the process feels sustainable enough to be consistent with. And that's where your coach comes in and helping to create a process for you and a program for you that feels like something you can stick to. So for sure, communicate with them too.
Trisha asked us thoughts on homeschooling. Have you or would you ever consider it, or do you think the Connecticut schools will change for the better with this new administration? We've talked about this a couple of times on the podcast.
I was gonna say, who woke up and chose violence and wanted Josh to get angry on the podcast episode today?
Let's go.
We've thought about it for sure, and I think it's something we'll continue to just assess like each year. Obviously, Kai is in kindergarten now. He's in public school and he's thriving. Like, he loves school. He's doing a great job. He comes home and he's happy. So at this point, it's not like we're fully yes, homeschool. I'm not against it by any means. And I think it's just something we'll ask ourselves each year, like, what does he need? What is best for him? And we'll make that decision together. On the flip side, I can't imagine homeschooling right now with Cora being so young and also another baby on the way and obviously business. But I know people do it, and I know that it can feel scary because it's not the norm, but we're open.
Where do I begin?
Well, let me jump in here before Josh takes over on a very angry tangent.
You guys
that
got 90 minutes to spare?
My camera's gonna die before then, Josh. I would just, for me personally, because I have not talked about this, in theory, love the idea. Logistically, nightmare. That's where I'm currently at in life. And I think, Alessandra, that's kind of what you were alluding to too. Like, if that's what seemed best for my kid and, you know, based on our school district or whatever else, or I was having those worries, I would definitely entertain it. And I've definitely already thought about it. And then my husband's like, in what time, like in what world do you think you're going to have time to add that to your plate? So I think theoretically, I love the idea. Logistically, I don't know how we could do it, but it's going to be a cross that bridge when you get to it type of situation.
And that's fair. And jokes aside, this isn't an angry rant. Like, I am more comfortable with the way things are right now. I would say we are in a good area. Some weird things have crept up, you know, to the outskirts, and, you know, our community is pretty strong, and those things to this point haven't been allowed to continue. That being said, if it was ever a concern, we would just find a way. We would find a way to homeschool. It's something we feel that strongly about. We have literally built our lives before kids around the idea of raising kids. We work from home so we can be with our kids, so they're not going up in daycare. We see them from, you know, 5 to 8 o'clock every night and go to bed and start over and then try to do stuff during the summer. That's just not how we roll. We do our best to be sustainable. You know, got the chickens, try to do a garden. That was an utter fail. We'll do better next year. But I mean, you actually look at the parameters of the things you need to do. Like, if we needed to swing it, we could. And if it gets to a point where it is more of a negative for our children to be in public school, they will not be in public school anymore. We, like, our mindset to, you know, take that to a full extreme. Like, we would go live off the grid if we needed to, if things got that weird and just we had to.
See you, Joelle. Good luck with them.
No. They'll show up to Montana.
I'll be on the grid with you. Yeah, this is a group effort. This is a buy a compound and I'll live there.
Exactly. That, which is the dream. Honestly, I would love to do the compound thing and
have
just
our whole
reconnect.
team out there, all our team's families. It'd be so freaking cool.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible.
I love that.
And I know people, you know, we joke a little bit and, you know, serious to an extent, but, you know, being able to control the variables within school and how strongly I feel about certain things. And I won't say that, you know, in this sense, like, it is a privilege to be able to make those kinds of decisions and to be able to say, this is how it's going to be. But I will also say we've put ourselves in position to have that privilege. Like I said, before we had kids, this was always the thing. It was always for our kids. And everything we're doing now is for our kids. We talk about, you know, our goal is to make the world a happier, healthier place. That is so our kids have a better community to grow up in. Like, that is our biggest goal, is to make the world a better place. So this isn't like anti-other humans. It's just, if we ever got to a point where the line was crossed and people are making decisions for us, which is currently the case in other states, where they can hide those things from parents and just not kind of take some of the parenting out of the parents' hands, we're out. It's just not going to be a thing. We will find a way to do it on our own. So we actually get shit from some of our family, my family members. My grandmother has a very, very strong personality, and she will tell you what's on the top of her mind. And anytime we talk homeschool, it's basically, are you an idiot? What are you doing? That's so dumb. I'm like, okay, you just, you know, take it on the chin and keep moving forward.
Was she a teacher by any chance? Did she work in education at all?
Very funny you ask. My aunt is a teacher. My grandmother actually, I don't know how this works. At the time, she would fill in as like a sub or something, somehow, some way. I'm not sure how, like, if anybody can be a substitute teacher, but she would be yelling at these. This is probably
Who let
15,
her
15
in?
years ago. I don't know. I think they told her she couldn't come back anymore. She would be yelling at these kids, calling them whine asses. They get a smack on the back of the head. Like, she's old school. Yeah, she's old school. This is before you go
Probably
to
not
jail
the
for that.
worst thing, honestly.
No, I think you need some of
I
that.
mean,
And
yeah. I ask because I find that um, some of the older generations are very like education, 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 which I totally get. I am someone that has worked in education, but also being someone that worked in education, it made me not want to put my kids in public school.
Well,
So
I was just going to say, whenever
I
I've
might have a,
entertained this idea, like publicly on Instagram, answering a Q&A, teachers specifically would be like, you could totally do it. I highly recommend you homeschool. Like, it's just funny to me that it was the teachers specifically who were like, I homeschooled my kids. So I don't know what that says, but
yeah, I can say I definitely wouldn't put my kids where I taught. Granted, I live in the suburbs now, and I was teaching in an inner city, New York City public school DOE, which was, to be frank, an absolute shit show. And I worked in that system for 4 years, and I no longer wanted to contribute to what that system was because it is not in the best interest of the kids, in my opinion, which is a whole other thing, a whole other podcast topic that we could dive into. And I'd gladly have a tell all episode. I got stories on stories. But anyway, I taught in a high school. So obviously I was not with elementary school age kids. So I can't speak to that per se. But I can speak to what high school kids were like and their learning abilities and their mental health and their mindsets, teaching in a health classroom and health and phys ed, and what that looked like. And obviously, I don't know their elementary and middle school experiences as younger children, but I could see by high school what they were a product of. And that was a very, very interesting experience.
And that's like, just to that point, I won't go rambling too far with it, but that's where I see a lot of value in the potential of public school. And I also see like the main reasons why I would homeschool. It's like, we're telling these kids how good of a person you are based on a score. And we don't all learn the same way, and we don't all, test the same way. And we could be doing things on a much more individual level, very similar to what we do with coaching, and just being able to incorporate more actual life skills. And not to say that anything you learn in high school is totally useless, but just leadership and finance and planning for the future, and being independent, focusing on regulating your emotions. Like, why are we not talking about these things in school? Like, why are we not focused on the long term? And, okay, maybe you don't do this well, but what do you enjoy? And how can I teach you that's a little bit different? They've done these double-blind tests or studies. Basically, I think this happened the first time as an accident. I think I just read this in a book by Deepak Chopra. But a glitch in the computer told one group of teachers that they had the kids who weren't performing well or testing well, had behavioral issues, and the other kids were the bright kids. When in actuality, the lists were switched. The teachers taught up and taught down to what the information they were told. And if the kids who were, behaviorally off a bit and they weren't typically great testers, if they weren't learning and getting the scores that they needed, the teacher adapted the plan because they thought, okay, well, this person is typically a really good student, so I must be doing something wrong. So they shifted that and they became better students. The other group, the vice versa, got the other group, and they just said, no, these are just the way they are. The brighter kids, quote unquote, they should be tested. They're down scored. Sorry, I lost my train of thought with where that other side was. But they taught down to that level, and those scores actually decreased. So, quote unquote, less bright kids got smarter. Quote unquote, brighter kids got less bright in a sense, because of the perspective the teacher received coming into that. So those are the things that we're not doing in the system on a regular basis. How do I elevate everybody? How do I individualize everything that I'm doing for all these people, so we're setting them up for more success down the road? So all in my tangent there, but there are just so many more things we can be doing for those who haven't had a great upbringing to support them and let them know they can change the world and they can do all these great things. So public system has the potential to do things. In the same sentence, they are not doing those things. So can we set them up for success on our own via homeschool?
I also want to say that it's very rarely the teachers themselves that are the issue, that it's
Agreed.
usually much, much larger than the teachers. I know a lot of really fantastic teachers. I know a lot of really shitty teachers. And the difference, in my opinion, is who. It's a little more loaded than I anticipated with what was about to come out of my mouth.
Just
But
walked it right down the plank.
yeah, just hold on. Let me just reel that back in real quick. I think that what I noticed, and I was only there for 4 years, but I got to my 4th year and said, holy shit, I can't do this for another 30 years. Like, this just is not, and I love teaching. I love teaching and I love my students. You could, like, if you've seen me on Instagram, you could probably tell I love teaching. Like, it is ingrained in me. I'm a teacher at heart. But I hated the system. I hated the system. I hated the way the administration was run. I'm not talking about like political like administration. I'm talking about the school administration, like the politics of the school building and the policies of the school building and the hierarchy of a school building, and that you could be a fan freaking tastic teacher who's doing so much more work and doing so much more outreach and so much more helpful for children. And, they're getting paid less than the teacher who's been there for 30 years, but is a shit teacher, because that teacher's tenured. And so there's no way to get them out. And so they could talk to students however they want and, not have the outcomes, but like they're tenured, so they're fine. I've got a lot of different thoughts and perspectives about that. And, but what I wanted to say is a lot of times it's not necessarily the teachers at fault. It's that the teachers are trying to follow a system that they're being forced into. Like, I had to do plenty of things that I didn't want to do and didn't think were right for the students, to, help the school look good, or like, before we get off on a huge other tangent here, I will give you one small example, and then maybe we could dive into this in another podcast if anyone wants to hear about it. But like, just an example, because you're like, why is she doing things she didn't want to do? Like, prime example, right? The policies of a school, like a school never wants to look bad, right? They don't want to have high suspension rates. They don't want to have high fail rates. Then the school gets a negative rating. Then people don't want to come to that school, things like that. And, a prime example is if you don't come to my class and you don't do any work and you don't hand anything in, I'm going to fail you. Well, I would get in trouble for failing kids who didn't come. So then the school like puts forth a policy, you can't fail a kid based on attendance. Okay, so if this kid came to my class 0 times, I can't fail them? No. Okay, what about if they came to class but they did 0 work? Well, you still have to pass them because they came. I'm like, what are we teaching these kids? And so I would get in trouble if I didn't pass those kids. So like, I had to pass kids, and then you're like, oh, no wonder I have a senior who can't write a functional sentence, because they have been passed along in this system over and over and over, because it was like, oh, the teacher got in trouble, so they had to pass them because otherwise the school looked bad, and otherwise the numbers looked bad, and we didn't want to fail kids. We didn't, because then the school looks bad. So you're like, okay. Well, now this kid's 18 and they like don't know how to write a paragraph. And you're like, you can't even blame the kid. Like, as much as we want to be like, oh, these kids, the education in America, these kids are so dumb. It's like, well, they're in a shit school system that has just passed them along and along and along, and all we've done is a disservice to that kid. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's my side. This could be a whole, I could record 27 episodes on this. So
let us know if you guys want an episode on this, because I think it's important as parents. And I mean, you've been there, so I think if anybody can talk about it, it's you.
Started with a Q&A about pre-workout fat intake, and here we are talking about the New York City public DOE.
We have 2 more questions, and they're good questions, so let's get through these. This is from Emily. How to gauge a good, quote unquote, cardio workout? I struggle with focusing on the Peloton output, but when she's cycling, but then that fatigues my legs so much while also trying to lift. Should you approach more from a heart rate versus output standpoint? Thanks. I think this is probably a common struggle, not just with Peloton, but I mean, we hear it all the time now that running is having its moment too, is like, how do you lift and run on the same day? And like, my legs are fatigued and I feel like I'm always sore. it gets to the point where sometimes you will be running on sore legs and you will be lifting on slightly fatigued legs. Like that's just part of doing both. I will say there are ways to make sure that you optimize recovery and make sure that things are set up properly when it comes to programming to ensure that we minimize this as much as possible. But there's plenty of runs that I've had where I started off with super sore legs from leg day, or maybe I went for a run later in the week and then I had to do a deadlift day, and you power through it. And it's not that it's bad to lift on sore or fatigued legs, as long as it's not negatively impacting your form and how you're moving throughout the workout. Will you be as strong as a day that you're completely refreshed? Probably not, but again, that's just part of training. So I think, just to answer the question on my perspective here, it sort of depends on what your goals are. So if Peloton and improving your output with cycling is your main goal, then that's something that you should be paying attention to. But if you're just trying to improve your cardiovascular endurance, then I would probably focus on heart rate over output personally.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who rides the Peloton on a weekly basis, I can say I almost never ever look at my output. Like, it's just not something that I'm like, I mean, it's cool when you get that badge at the end and it's like highest output, like a PR, cool. But it's not something I'm checking personally throughout my workout. I don't know if you feel like you check that metric at all, Alessandra. Like, generally speaking, I try to pick a ride with an instructor who's going to push me. I do my best to stay within the prescribed cadence and resistance. And other than that, like, my output is my output. I'm not gauging, like, to me, if I'm working hard and I'm getting breathy or breathless from a sprint or whatever type of, Peloton ride it is, that was a good cardio workout to me. Mm-hmm. I'm not using the output to tell me whether or not it was a good workout. I can feel whether or not it was a good workout.
Yeah, I agree. I think output, when it comes to Peloton, they kind of hold it on a pedestal. Like, it's almost like a gamification of it, right? Like,
yeah,
it kind of,
it's the leaderboards.
It's the leaderboard. It kind of pushes you to, want to be better in that aspect. So I personally would let that go, unless like that's like your main thing and you want to be top of the leaderboard for all your classes, then you go, girl. But I think, when it comes to focusing on your cardio, engaging a good cardio workout, like, just make sure your heart rate is in the correct zone that you're trying to do. And that's that. Obviously, understand that sometimes it's just going to be done on sore or fatigued legs.
As a non-competitive athlete, I gauge my cardio effectiveness based on what does my blood pressure look like? Is my resting heart rate going down? How's my HRV? I know the VO2 max and these Oura rings and whatnot aren't very accurate, but if you're getting that testing done, like, is my cardio capacity improving? Cardiovascular health, how does that look? If I'm moving in the right direction, then it's working.
Preach. All right, last question of the Q&A from Shannon. There is so much conflicting info on how to train for body recomposition. If muscle base is there, do you still need progressive overload, or can you switch it up and do things like F45 style or more muscle endurance type workouts? I've been training since I was 15. I'm now 46, and I feel like I've done everything at this point. Does it just come down to diet to see body recomposition? Please help.
That's a great question. And this is something that is asked a lot, and people think that the way that you train has to change based on your goal. You're typically going to train the same way. If you've improved your body composition, if you built muscle a certain way, you're going to maintain that muscle the same way. You're going to continue to focus on improving your strength over time, progressive overload over time, in whatever capacity that already looked like for you, if you've seen positive results. So it does come down to what you're putting into your body. What are you consuming? Calories. What is your macronutrient breakdown? Are you getting enough protein in? And that's really the big two, is calories and protein. We have a whole episode we did, and we'll probably circle back and do it in the not too distant future. But gaintaining. So if you're happy with where your muscle mass is at and you don't have a ton of fat to lose, can you go through this gaintain process, this period at, around maintenance? Maybe it's a slight deficit, but you continue to prioritize performance in the gym. You continue to prioritize getting enough calories in to recover, but put yourself in a slight deficit. So, you're not going to lose 15 pounds in the next month, but body composition is going to improve at a pretty significant rate if you're continuing to progress in the gym and you're eating the right things and at the right amounts. A lot of times too, like one of the easiest ways to go about this, and this again isn't going into demonizing sugar and highly processed foods, but just from a common sense standpoint and just from what's going to happen, a results-based standpoint, if you prioritize almost entirely nutrient-dense whole foods as your diet, most of you won't even need to track to see an improvement in your body composition. If you're eating until you're full or right before you're full, you can do this from an intuitive basis and focus on kicking ass in the gym. You can way, way, way simplify what this process actually needs to look like for you. Focusing on consuming the right things in the right amounts based on your biofeedback, those internal cues, and just ride that out for a longer duration versus going for a hard cut where you're going to lose more muscle than you need to. And then you go back to bulk and you do this gut bulk cycle. I don't know what you're doing to your butt. Back and forth there. I'm going to tap out now. See ya.
And goodbye.
I agree with everything you said. And I will add to, you mentioned like progressive overload, the F45 stuff. Even if, like, let's say you're happy with what your body composition looks like, you get to a point where you are content, that's not a reason to stop training via progressive overload, because as we get older, our muscle mass is naturally declining and, things are going to shift in that regard. So if we're not focusing on training in an efficient way, progressive overload isn't just for aesthetics either. It's for your overall health and for making sure that you maintain the muscle mass required to live a long and active life. So I would say it really never gets to the point where you can just be like, peace out, progressive overload, peace out, macros, I'm good, I don't need you anymore. Like obviously there are phases to life, but it never gets to the point where you become like above what science is telling us is helping us even just maintain, if that makes sense.
I also sort of read this question as like, hey, I have the muscle base. Like, is it cool if I do go and do F45? And to that, I'm like, yeah, sure. Like if that is something that you like and you're like, hey, I kind of want to switch it up, not even from a muscle confusion standpoint, but from like maybe I'm bored with traditional bodybuilding or traditional strength training and I want something that makes me feel like I get my heart rate up and is just a different kind of muscular endurance workout, like by all means, go do that. If you're like, hey, I want to build pounds and pounds and pounds of muscle, I don't know that F45 would be the most efficient for that. But if you're like, I'm just trying to stay active, I've been doing fitness for 30 years, and I just want to try something else and still maybe see some body recomp, I think you could absolutely do that while doing F45.
Yeah, I agree. I think we just kind of read that question slightly differently.
In 3 different ways.
Yeah.
Hopefully that 3 different perspectives answers your question one way or another.
Oh boy. Well, that was the last one. I think that was another great episode, another long episode. Somehow Joelle's camera, I'm shocked your camera did not die.
I know.
It's impressive.
Go us.
Go us. But again, if you guys want to ask questions for next week, make sure to join the Facebook group. Look out for Josh's post with him asking you to ask questions. And do you want to go over your little 3-episode rule?
3-episode rule, guys.
Request.
There goes the camera.
And there goes the
Joelle
camera.
taps out.
Like
Bye-bye.
that was
Good night.
wild. What
Good night.
timing? What timing on that?
Impeccable timing. All right, so quick 3-episode rule, guys. If you are listening into the 3rd episode, you've obviously gotten some value. We just ask that you leave us a quick 5-star review, share the episode, tag us on social media. Any of the above is greatly appreciated. We do this to give you guys free resources to improve your lives, things you can take home on a daily basis and start applying today. And if it helped you, the whole point is that it can probably help somebody else. So we don't, pay to get this promotion out there for the podcast. This is all organic. So the only way we grow is by the support through you guys. And we have the best community out there. We appreciate the heck out of you. And, that's all we ask in return. If you're getting value from this, pay it forward, share it, leave us the review, help us extend this audience. Don't forget, I'll kind of recap again. We've got that challenge going live December 1st. You can join the app for free. You have a free month code LVLTN. Gets you the first 30 days for free. You can cancel anytime. This is not some kind of trick. Like you can do it right from your profile, and that will get you into the challenge where you can win a few really cool prizes that will be announced in an email this weekend. But I'm sure it'll be public once we announce the challenge to the public. Where can they find you?
I'm at Alessandra Skutnik
At Joelle Samantha.
I'm at Josh Skutnik.
Everything else you need is linked in the show notes.